my name is Adam Hoyne, and this week's Friday 5 is going to be on discernment. So I'm going to talk a little bit about discernment and bring St Ignatius of Loyola into this. Over the past 5 years, I have made a lot of decisions, as have you guys, on different choices in life, from entering seminary to exiting seminary, to going to 6 different colleges now, to asking my fiance to marry me, to buying a farm, to buying a house. All these big decisions, but discernment can actually help us in the little decisions in the everyday life as well. So God communicates to us through our prayer, through desires that He puts in our hearts, through inclinations of the heart, of the soul, of fervorness, spiritual fervorness. Not all of these are good ones. Even though they may appear good, the devil often lurks around in sheep's clothing. So discerning is what is of God, what is of the devil. I'm going to call that the spirit of God and the spirit of evil. Discernment is actually choosing between two goods, not good versus evil. Choosing between good versus evil, we must always choose what is good. But choosing between two goods, say marriage and the priesthood, which one do we decide? Which one is God calling us to? So St Ignatius wrote 2 books, The Discernment of Spirits and Spiritual Exercises. He actually wrote more than those, but those are his most famous ones. And he gives 7 qualities of true discernment in those books. Number 1, openness to a decision. Number 2, generosity. We have to allow God to move in our hearts. Number 3, courage. Number 4, interior freedom. Number 5, we have to have a prayer life. Number 6, we have to have our priorities straight. And number 7, we must not confuse the ends with the means. So St. Ignatius gives us 2 situations to discern. Times of consolation and times of desolation. Consolation is when God gives us a spiritual awakening in our soul. We feel warm, we feel close to God, close to others. We give Him thanks, we give Him praise. Where desolation is we feel kind of bogged down in the spiritual life. We have all these decisions we have to make, and we don't turn to God. Instead, we rely on ourselves, feel kind of miserable about it. Both need discernment, and so St. Ignatius argues that both need a list of rules. And then he boils these down into 2 more categories. A soul that is very fervorous and fervent and loving God, has a prayer life, receives the sacraments well, and a soul who's kind of cut off from God, maybe has an addiction or some sinful habits or doesn't really pray, kind of lukewarm. So the first, when the soul is fervorous, the Spirit of God sends desires and thoughts and feelings of encouragement, of fervor, of fire, of peace. God kind of removes obstacles in our lives during that time. Whereas the spirit of evil only gives us anxiety, confusion, frustration, temptations, an overabundance of temptations. Now, the soul that has been cut off, the Spirit of God is kind of a wake-up call. We oftentimes feel remorse and sorrow for our sins. God is saying, wake up, my loved one. Where the evil spirit kind of leads us into confusion and darkness. We have more anxiety. We kind of feel satisfied and lukewarm. We're okay with where we're at. St. Ignatius goes further and says there are 7 practical tips in battling discernment techniques. Number 1, place in mind your options, your decision. What is the decision? We have to cognitively think of that. Number 2, try to be like a balance at equilibrium. Don't be biased towards one decision before you even made it. Number 3, pray for knowledge to know where God is calling you to serve Him. That's an important one. We oftentimes forget that. Number 4, give advice to somebody else, or pretend you're giving advice to somebody else. And say someone comes up to you with these 2 options or 3 options, however many there are. What would you do, Adam? Well, I would do this because of, etc. Number 5, pretend you're at the end of your life. You're on your deathbed. What decision would you make that would be fruitful that you may enter the kingdom of heaven? Or maybe a decision you made way back in your youth. Ooh, will that bring me to heaven or will it not? Number 6, make a pros and cons list of the options and be reasonable. So reason is the greatest gift that God has given us, so we must use that. And step number 6, try to leave out all feelings. Just try to use your reason and practicality on this step. And finally, number 7, ask God for confirmation. Ask Him for consolation in your decision. Ask Him for a sign that you may know that you made the right decision. Discernment can be very difficult. It can be a very dry time in one's life. It can, if not done properly, it can actually add to the anxiety. And it takes a while to master. It's just plain and simple. There's a lot of great saints out there. St. Francis de Sales is another one. He wrote Introduction to Devout Life. So if you're looking for a summer read, I highly recommend that one because it's kind of a book that details how to be a disciple of God as an ordinary lay person. And in it is obviously discernment techniques. It's very much worth it to learn discernment. I would highly encourage it to kind of take the time and re-examine our souls. And always remember that Si Deus pro nobis quia contra nos, which means if God is for us, who can be against us? My name is Adam Hoyne with Quo Vadis, and God bless.